Good afternoon, everyone. It's Kalkajad Erin Berlin here. We're going to be discussing decolonizing self-care this afternoon. I was asked to be a guest speaker in a self-care workshop a couple of weeks ago where we had 180 participants sign up. And a lot of people signed up for my segment of the workshop, and they were not able to access the workshop while I was giving it. And so I thought I would hop on here and just give an overview of what I was going to say in that workshop and kind of expand on it a little bit, because that one was a little bit short. It was very short, and I felt very rushed getting through all of the items. So yeah, I'm going to spend about half an hour discussing different aspects of decolonizing self-care. And if you do have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section, and I will be able to answer them at the end of the session. So I'm just going to, my notes just disappeared, of course. Hang on one sec, guys. Okay. We have... So one of the things that I find really disappointing with our current consumer culture is that oftentimes when society is trying to sell the idea of self-care, what they're actually trying to do is sell products. So I feel like so much of it is just a marketing scheme that we are all influenced to buy things, to care for ourselves. And so we're constantly barraged with these marketing messages like, go for a facial, go for a massage, buy this new skincare product, buy these new silk pajamas, take a weekend retreat getaway. And all of those things are amazing. They do good things for us. But what I've been more interested in are some of the practices that we can do daily or weekly, or sometimes even monthly, that are more in alignment with the tools that our ancestors used to stay in balance and to stay healthy and to recharge. And, what did they use to reset their mind, body, and spirit? So what I really wanted to stress in this workshop is that from a cultural perspective, all of our wellness and self-care practices literally cost nothing. There's no monetary value there. Literally, the only thing that it'll cost you is your time and some dedication and some effort. So my biggest obstacle personally is myself. I'm either lacking the energy or the discipline. And so I'm sure that you can all relate that we often wait until we're already too stressed or we're too overwhelmed before we start taking self-care seriously. And so because I've had health conditions, I'm very acutely aware of what's happening to my body and how my emotions are playing into how I'm feeling physically. I was hypothyroid for most of my adult life, and I live with full-blown fibromyalgia. And those symptoms can be managed very well based on how well I take care of myself. And so my self-care is absolutely a necessity for me. So I still do push myself to the limit often. I'm not sure if many of you out there are suffering with any chronic illnesses like fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue syndrome or rheumatoid arthritis, but all of those things will be helped tremendously by the things that we'll be discussing today. So let's get into it. I have one guest. Hello, guest. 4 guests now. Okay. There's something going on with my computer, so bear with me for a second. It keeps shifting pages, so I'm just gonna close this and open it back up. Can you hear me clicking away? Sorry for the delay, guys. It's shifting. Hang on one second. Of course, we have to have technical glitches right in the middle of stuff so that this can just be really awkward, right? Okay. Where did it go? Oh, my whole pages of notes just left me, which is just irritating. Hang on one sec, guys. Here we go. Computer glitches. Thanks for hanging in there with me, guys. Okay, here we go. Um, what I've come to learn, or if you've ever heard me speak before on the topic of wellness, because it's something I've been passionate about pretty much my whole life, you probably heard me talk about how one of my favorite aspects of our culture is that traditionally there was always, always a time, a place, and a space specifically to do our healing and time to do reconnecting. And so while I recognize that many of us are living in urban environments and we're living displaced from our traditional territories, we don't always have the means to get back to those traditional practices in the way that they were traditionally done. So what I've strived to do for most of my life is to find ways to incorporate those types of practices, but finding contemporary ways or within contemporary settings like my home because it's convenient. And what I've come to learn over many years of participating in cultural wellness practices since my mid-teens is that, like, I'm also a complete science nerd. And so I've always been very interested in being up on the latest research that's come out in the area of health and wellness. But when I compare what our ancestors have always done traditionally and how it is all now being very backed up by science, that is not a surprise to me because I truly believe that our ancestors knew what they were doing to keep themselves healthy and in alignment with body, mind, and spirit. So it's no coincidence that our ancestors had the discipline to do things like rising in the morning with the sun, giving prayers of gratitude in the morning as the sun is rising. And, now we have all of these studies coming out that are saying bright light in the morning, it reinforces our circadian rhythms, and that in and of itself has a massive benefit to our mental health. It actually can stave off depression and anxiety. And so we live in a very cloudy part of the world, so we don't often have access to bright light in the morning. So if you don't have access to bright light, you can't open your window and face your face to the sun. You do have alternatives now that are a modern take on these age-old practices. You can order blue lights from pretty much anywhere now. They're actually made for seasonal affective disorder, and they're made for people who live in places that, up in the north where they don't see a lot of sun throughout the whole winter months, and some places don't see the sun at all. So in those Nordic regions and far north in Canada and Nunavut and all of those places, a lot of people tend to utilize those blue lights as a way to keep their whole their circadian rhythm in sync. So all of those things, it's all like newer research that's coming out that's backing all of these age-old traditions. And so again, like I said, it's not a surprise to me. Giving gratitude in the morning, now there's all of this evidence, all of these science studies saying how helpful it is to wake up with a grateful spirit. And just have that be the focus to set the tone for your day and how that can improve your mental health. And so again, that's something that our ancestors did on a regular basis. And science is now confirming that that's very true. So one of the other decolonization practices is something you can do in the comfort of your own home, and it's dancing. So our cultural teachings say that the farther removed we are from our traditional practices of singing and dancing, the harder it is for us to attain happiness. So if you look at the physiological perspective, just purely the physical of dancing and singing, you can see again that how science has caught up to this ancestral wisdom, because now they're telling us that being physical and moving helps alleviate depression, anxiety, and insomnia. So we also know that the act of singing or humming or chanting stimulates the vagus nerve, which also promotes our nervous system to go into that rest and repair mode, which helps us to feel calm and relaxed. So in our high stress world that we live in, most of us live in a condition of chronic stress. And in order to tone our nervous systems down and to kind of readjust our nervous system to get it back into that calm and relaxed state, singing is one of the best ways we can do that. And the cool part about that is, when you look at kids, when you look at toddlers and preschoolers, they're constantly dancing and singing and jumping and hopping. It's like they know the recipe for happiness. They're just moving, they're jumping up and down, they're laughing. And if we could only emulate that and still be considered civilized human beings, we may have found the recipe for happiness just by looking at the young ones and what they're doing. We also derive so much joy from being around, physically happy and exuberant energy. But physiologically speaking, it's literally impossible to sing and then still feel miserable. I mean, think about it. If you've ever been really sad and put on a really sad song, and that song can make you cry, and it can be so cathartic and heart-wrenching, and yet when that song is done or when you're done, you feel better. It just naturally happens that you will feel better. And the best part about that is you can do that behind closed doors in the comfort of your own home. Of course, trying to learn your own traditional songs has never been easier. With all of this access online, there are so many amazing teachers online that are teaching cultural things. You can access cultural songs, cultural dances. I'm not sure how many of you have drums or use drums, hand drums. I'm talking about like hide hand drums. But I can tell you from my own personal experience that no matter how resistant I am in the moment to sing, and there's been many times where my energies have been very off, or if I'm in a very negative state of mind, just singing with one song with a drum can completely shift my entire energy field and my entire mood. It's never failed me. Literally, it's impossible to drum and sing and not feel the shift in energy and the shift in mood. So I remember a few times having to perform in situations that were very awkward for me. Not just for the performance, but there were things going on the sidelines that were negative and making me feel as though that I shouldn't be sharing my cultural offerings in certain environments where I felt hesitant if I should be sharing and things like that. But what happened every single time was that I would just get this massive energy rush. And it wasn't because I loved performing, because I do not love performing, but I can attest to the fact that our ancestors bless us every time we uphold our culture. And I feel that in a physical sense when I share culturally. I can feel the blessing of that, and I feel an energy rush from that. I've experienced it over and over again, so I totally know for myself that to be the truth. So traditionally, another one, so singing and dancing. And again, like I said, you can learn the cultural practices from your territories. You can learn them most likely on YouTube, because there's actually so many people that are sharing and they want people to reconnect with their culture. So even if it's something that you just do in the comfort of your own home, that is something, and it will shift your energy. It will fuel you. You will feel better for it. The next one is actually heat and cold therapy. And this is from the tradition of our people, where they did sweats and they did bathing in cold water. Now, I recognize that not every tribe did sweats, but many tribes did have ways to sweat it out. And almost all tribes, because we had no heated water, we all did cold bathing traditionally. So I'm a firm believer in saunas, and I really, truly cannot live without my infrared sauna. I had one for several years, and then when I separated from my husband, I left the house and left with nothing, and I went many years without having one. But I ended up having to go to the rec center, and they had, it was only $5 to use the infrared sauna at the rec center. And that's what I did for many years, because it was really one of the best things that I could do for my physical body, but also for my state of mind, because you can use that time when you're in the sauna to meditate or pray or just sit and be calm and be still. Now, of course, the rec center wasn't ideal because there was often people in there that wanted to chit chat while I wanted to be in a meditative state. So it wasn't always the most conducive of having, downtime when people were being very chatty in the rec center, which is why as soon as I was able to get another one, I actually found a secondhand one on Facebook Marketplace. And, a lot of people are selling them for very cheap. And some of them are so small that you can just stick them in your closet. The other alternative is that you can even buy infrared sauna blankets so that you don't have to have a big unit if you're in a rental or you don't have the space. You can buy these little blankets that you it's like a sleeping bag. You kind of lie in it and sweat it out. It's the same health benefits. So I rely heavily on saunas for my overall health and wellness. I go back and forth between taking time to meditate and pray and manifest while I'm in there. And to be honest, sometimes I just take my work in there and I'm literally just too busy to do focus my mind on meditation or relaxation. And I just have to get more of my work done, but I'm still doing what's best for my physical body in the moment because it literally is a major de-stressor for me. And sometimes when I just kind of need to decompress my mind, but I'm not in the zone to meditate, I watch YouTubes in there that are focused on health. I'm kind of addicted to health podcasts on YouTube. I listen to them all the time. So I'm not always treating it as though it's a sacred time and space because sometimes my life is too busy to do that. But other times I do definitely shut everything off, kind of decompress my mind, create that sacred space, and take the time to really go within. The other, what I was going to say about the heat and cold is that now, see, if you think of the traditional sweat lodge ceremonies, how people would be in the sweats and then in between rounds, they would go out and dip into the river or whatever body of water was nearby. But of course, now science is saying that doing this alternating heat and cold therapy is tremendously helpful for so many aspects of our system, but primarily it helps us to decrease inflammation. It helps to trigger autophagy and our body's entire healing and repair mechanisms. There's these things called heat shock proteins. And the heat shock and cold shock proteins both work in the same way. One is triggered by heat, the other one's triggered by cold, but it essentially just triggers this repair mechanism so that our cells actually go in to start recycling the cells that are dying and taking those and recycling them back into healthy cells. And so these are all processes that happen because we're putting a minor amount of stress. It's like a healthy stress. It's not the same type of stress as the chronic ongoing life stresses that we encounter, but it's like a short-term stressor on our physical body that then triggers these repair mechanisms. You may have heard of people like Wim Hof, and he is a huge proponent of cold therapy. So my son, Kaya, he was really into Wim Hof, and he was telling me about the health benefits of this for 2 years, literally 2 years, trying to convince me to do the cold therapy, like cold baths or cold showers. So he was quite young. He was 18. He would jog along the river, and then he would take the time to plunge into the river, and he would go right under, several times, dip his head under, even during the winter. So, I mean, he was mostly doing it during the winter. So it's a very cold glacier-fed river. And so he kept saying, you'll feel so great. And there's all this science backing it. And I was such a wuss. I do not want to be outside of my comfort zone whatsoever. And so I was like, oh, no. I'm too much of a wimp. And the more I thought about it and the more he convinced me about it, and I did look into Wim Hof and I did look into the health benefits and stuff like that. But what I started to realize was our ancestors were so hardy. Our ancestors were so strong. I mean, seafaring people, haidas on canoes, they were no problemo being in the ocean. I mean, one of the earlier readings that I did when I was a teenager about the missionaries in Haida Gwaii is that they said that the women and children bathed daily in the ocean. That's our people. They did that daily, even throughout the winter. And I just think to myself, well, I come from these people and I should not be such a wuss. I really should be, trying to build up my endurance to be able to tolerate these things, which does happen. You do get stronger. So it literally took me 2 years to convince myself to do it. I mean, I shouldn't say 2 years to convince myself. For 2 years, I was resistant to doing it. And then what happened was during the COVID lockdown, I really committed myself to doing a regular practice of it. And so I started doing the heat cold therapy by doing 20 minutes in the sauna and then a 4-minute cold bath. So when I first started doing the cold therapy, I was just doing it in the shower, and we have a rain head shower and a handheld shower, and I would have both of them on me. Like I would hold the handheld and keep it on my face until it felt like there was like knife stabs in my, like it was very painful, especially on your neck and your face. So I would do that. I experimented to find out how much time I could handle doing them, especially at night, because if I did it for more than 3 minutes in the evening, it would wake me up too much to actually have, like, I wouldn't be able to fall asleep easily because I have sleep issues anyways. But if I did it for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, then I would have a really good sleep. But if I did it for more than that, then it would actually cause me to be awake for too long. But what I recently started to do is what I was just saying before about doing the cycling in and out of the sauna and doing an ice bath. So I'll fill my entire bathtub up with ice cold water, throw ice packs in there, throw like as much ice as my ice maker can make into the bath. And so it's quite cold. I think it's like 10 degrees or so. And so I will go in the sauna for 20 minutes and then go in the ice bath for 4 minutes and do that cycle 3 times. What happens when you do this cycle is that it improves your endothelial cell health. That's like your heart cells. They actually start to become dysfunctional as you get older, and it leads to things like heart disease and hardening of the arteries. But these practices help reduce that because it reduces inflammation. So one of my biggest downfalls is that I am an exercise avoidant person. Like I do not enjoy exercise. If I do exercise, I solely do it for the health benefits because it actually doesn't make me feel better. It actually makes me feel like I need to have a nap. And I don't know if it's an effect of having fibromyalgia or what it is, but most people when they exercise, even if it's just a little walk or whatever, they come back feeling better. They feel more energized. They feel happier. I've never been one of those people that feels better with exercise. But this practice of doing the heat and cold therapy, this is something that you can do at home and find ways to do it that will actually help boost your mood immediately. So even if you do not have a sauna at home, what you can do is do a hot tub, like an Epsom salt bath, and you can go back and forth between your shower and your tub. And, if you might have to have 2 bathrooms to do that, but in our bathroom, we have a tub and a shower. So you can alternate that way. You can also, purchase a one of those infrared sauna mats, the blanket thing, and then do that back and forth into the bath between the heat and cold. There's also a lot more gyms and healthcare centers that have these options now. There's a lot of health units, especially on First Nations reserves, that offer infrared saunas. And so if they offer saunas with showers, you can go back and forth with the shower and the sauna. So that one, like I said, it's not easy to do, but once you start getting used to it, it's just another one of those mind over matter type things. It's like your mind is saying, "No, I don't wanna do it." But when you actually feel how good you feel after the fact, it's worth it. So it's kind of like exercise in that sense. Like, it's not something that you want to do that you're like, "Oh, I'm eager to do it," but you know how good after you feel, or how good you feel after, that it makes you motivated to do it. And so I know, with my fibromyalgia pain, it is vastly decreased to the point where it's not hindering me. Like, I can still, if I was to touch my muscles, I still feel sore, but I can function in my daily life without going, "Oh, like, oh, I'm so, in pain all the time." I do not need any kind of pain medications or anything like that at all, especially when I do this really regularly. So this, another aspect of decolonizing self-care, this one is, again, not one that people are gonna love, but it's traditionally, our people would not have had free access to food at all times of day and night, and, we wouldn't have had times where it's feast or famine, right? If you look back on all of human history, there's never been a time in human history where we've had such massive access to food at all times. And so one way to do self-care, and this method really does improve how you feel in terms of, reducing depression and anxiety. It's fasting. So again, this is another one of these things that science is now telling us, that time restricted eating or intermittent fasting, there's so many studies coming out all of the time to talk about how beneficial it is for our health to just not eat as much. So time restricted eating and intermittent fasting are pretty much the same thing. It's like you're going to take a window of time during the day that you're going to eat, and then you don't eat outside of that time window. And of course, it's something that you have to build up to, because if you're used to eating all the time, like as soon as your stomach growls, you're eating, it's going to take a while to reduce the hours that you're used to eating. But this one is no longer even controversial, even in our modern culture, because there's just so much research on it now. Even just, I would say, 6, 7 years ago, if you talked about time restricted eating or intermittent fasting, people would think that you had some sort of eating disorder, or, that you were being really extreme on some crazy diet. But nowadays, because of how much research is shown to improve your health on so many ways, not just weight loss, but balancing your blood sugar levels, reducing your insulin, all of those types of things. It's astounding how much science is backing this right now. So our people traditionally used fasting as part of a spiritual cleansing. And then, of course, people had always encountered times of food shortages or food scarcity. Our people would have really looked down upon anyone in the tribe or in the clan that would be constantly eating, because it's a communal supply, right? So if you have one or two people that are constantly eating, that would have been frowned upon. And I always chuckle when I read the Haida words for the different types of hunger, and just the language around food. And there's literally sayings where you're like telling people who are being too hoarding on the food that they're hoarding the food, and that's not okay. So there's actual words and phrases about that, because it's not a part of who we were traditionally, just to be constantly putting things in our mouth. So it really does have health benefits. When we talk about science coming out, that there's so much information. I'm not going to go into explaining all the processes, because they're complex cellular processes that go on in the body, and it's like kind of beyond my memory to even recall all of the different mechanisms that happen due to fasting. But one big catchphrase that's going on right now, it's called autophagy, and I mentioned it before. And what happens with fasting is that it triggers this process called autophagy, and it basically means that our cells are eating other cells. but it's the cells that are breaking down in our system. It's cells that are dying off in our system. And it's basically our way of repurposing those dead cells and reusing them and repurposing them. So it's like a internal repair and recycling system. So this is one of the big things. Like somebody just won a Nobel Prize for it a few years back. It's sort of a new discovery, and there's two really amazing ways, actually three amazing ways to trigger autophagy. One of them is through fasting, another one is through exercise, and the third one is through hot and cold therapy, which I already mentioned. So basically, if you're really wanting to kick your internal repair mechanisms, those are the methods, the ones that I just mentioned. So I also wanted to just take a few minutes to discuss, I know that a lot of people are encountering a lot of anxiety these days. And there's two very simple supplements that I use I recommend them to everybody. I actually used to make valerian root tincture. I haven't had time to make it recently, but I used to make it and sell it. Valerian root is considered nature's Valium. Of course, Valium is a drug, is highly addictive. It's not good for you. But it does feel really good if you've ever happened to be on it. It's very calming, very relaxing. You cannot experience anxiety when you're on that drug. Valerian has all of the same benefits, but it's nourishing to your I'm forgetting the name, your endocrine systems and your nervous system. So valerian root, you can get it in tincture form, which is the form that I generally prefer it. It has an awful smell. It smells like kind of like stinky feet or something, which is the worst part of using it, is that it has this awful smell, but it works very well. It works to help you feel sleepy. If you take it in higher doses, it can help you sleep. If you need it during the day because you have a lot of anxiety, just, a dropper full in a cup of tea or a juice or whatever. I don't mind the taste of it. Personally, it's just the smell that is not that great, but it has this amazing ability to calm your nerves and calm your anxiety. It makes you feel very relaxed. For a while there, because I had ran out, I started using another supplement, which is actually an amino acid called L-theanine, and that comes in capsule form. These are both readily available at any health food store. But if you are suffering with anxiety, L-theanine is one of the most amazing relaxation. So it's an amino acid, and so it's just a very easy thing to take. So anytime I have a couple of my kids that have anxiety, and whenever they're having a hard time, I'm like, here, take this L-theanine, and it's just like instant. Within 20 minutes, you just feel a lot calmer and able to face what's going on in your life. So I just wanted to add those two things because they're very inexpensive and they're very easy to access. You can order them online if you don't have a health food store in your community. If you're in Canada, well.ca is an amazing supplement company, and I believe they'll give you free shipping if you spend over $25. So I order from there often. I also order supplements from a place called iHerb. That's based out of the US, but they also have very good prices, even for shipping to Canada. And they offer very low cost shipping. So all of my supplement needs I get from iHerb.com or well.ca. So again, that's valerian root tincture and L-theanine capsules. And so if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer any questions. You can put them into the chat box there. And if not, we'll just sign off. And I hope you guys enjoyed Decolonizing Self-Care, and I really hope you guys try it out. It seems like a lot of scary things to do for some people, but it's things you can do in the comfort of your own home for the most part. Yeah, the daily ritual practices, the one that's really being recommended very strongly is the waking up in the morning, and as soon as you wake up, trying to get the bright outdoor light on your eyes. So you can't do it through a window because most of our windows are coated and they don't allow that light through. And if you we live on the West Coast, so it's like it's cloudy every day. So I've had a blue light and I've used my blue light probably for the last 15 years or so, at least 12 to 15 years. It's something that I feel energized and I feel like I can focus better when I use it, but it's because it has these other implications to our entire system. So it actually shifts, like it keeps our circadian clock, and our circadian clock guides so many other processes in our system, that just by aligning the light with when we first wake up, that alone can help your overall mental health. Now, of course, traditionally with doing the light in the eyes, that would be when you would be thinking of all the things you're grateful for in your life and conjuring those feelings of good, positive day. You're thinking about all the things that you're grateful for. And that's a practice, right? Gratitude is a practice. It's not something that comes naturally to most people. But when you take the time to actually practice and cultivate gratitude, it does shift your whole energy of being. And of course, people that are really into manifesting really 100% wholeheartedly believe that all of your manifesting has to come from a place of being really grateful for what we have right now. And the more you can practice the gratitude, the easier it is to manifest. That would be my number one. I don't often recommend smudging unless it's part of your own traditions. Not all tribes smudged. If you come from a tribe that's smudged, then that's great. If you don't, then you can find other things to burn. Taking the time to, do that sort of prayer where you're just asking for all the negativity being washed away from you and ask for all good things to come your way. Those are, really powerful practices that you can easily do every day. I can take any other questions if anyone has any. Okay, I'm going to sign off now, and this will be available on replay. You can watch it on the YouTube channel, Totem Design House. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope that was informative.